downloaded via web. Okay? So in here, we will talk about the different file detection technique that the proxy have in order to detect unwanted files. So there are three different types of inspection that the proxy do. So one is the proxy will check the file extension. So remember your HTTP or HTTPS that there are two message, request response. The file extension can be found by the proxy on the request coming from the user. Okay, so when the user clicks, let's say the user accesses the URL, and it clicks a file that you wanted to download, the moment the browser will send a request to retrieve the file, we will check the extension of the file, and based on policy, we can block them. Another method of detection is the HTTP content type. So the HTTP content type is seen as the HTTP response coming from the server. So if you examine the HTTP header that comes from the server or response from the server, you will see the HTTP content type there at the header. So using that information, the proxy can block the HTTP content type. Okay? It could be executable, MSI file, DLL files, or whatever that we can found at the content type. And lastly, the proxy, also coming from the response header, we can take a look at the apparent data type. Okay, so it's noted here that it is the most effective and the most costly. Now, we get to see this why later on and why this is effective, because nowadays, user who would craft or weaponize the files that will be sent to the user, they would typically change the file extension or also change the content type, because they know that once you change the file extension or the content type to a seemingly clean file type such as text or HTML, most network devices will not examine those type of file security devices. So that is why file name, file extension, or content type is not a very effective method in detecting it. So the effective way of doing it is using the apparent data type. So what is the apparent data type? So what happened here is the proxy will perform deep packet inspection and determine, based on the first 255 bytes of the file, what is the actual file type or file name of the file. And that is why this type of technique is resource intensive. Okay? Because imagine every file that the proxy will see will check out the first 255 bytes of the file to determine the actual file name or file type of the file. Out of the box, the proxy comes with 23, even more file types that we can inspect using apparent data type. Okay, it is already available in proxy. This is a very effective way of detecting drive-by malware installation, for example. So it is available in the VPN to be used in the policy. And besides file type, file extension, and content type, there are also content in a web page that are typically exploited by malicious user, and that is your mobile codes, such as your Java applets, your plugins, right? Your ActiveX or your scripts. So these are what we call active content. So most websites, especially with Web 2.0, where most websites are now very interactive, it contains a lot of mobile codes to run. So it is really not a good idea to block them all together in a policy, because you can actually create a VPN policy to block active content. But what you can do is you can create a policy together with the web filtering to actually identify sites based on category or based on risk level of the website, and you can remove active content from those websites. All right? So that is one thing that you can do. So this is an action object, such like over here, strip active content. So you can say that, I do not want, or I want to remove active content, for example, to a certain website. So like maybe, for example, only I would want to use the jpn.co.jp. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove any active content from that website. First, I need to install this. Okay, so we can try to access this website. Okay, so as you can see here, active content were removed. Let's go ahead and try to access some page. If we see some active content, you will see that it was removed. So this one seems to have no active content. Otherwise, we will be able to see that banner that active content will remove. Let's try. Okay, so yeah, this has no active content. All right, but earlier when we access the main page, there is an active content which was blocked. We can try some of the test pages. What happened? My remote desktop is slowing down. Yep, slowing down. See here, active content removed from the website. All right, so that is one thing that this can be used. Likewise, the apparent data type can also be used over here as a destination object. So we can use, over here is file extension, right? Or we can use, apparent data type. So these are the list of the different apparent data types that we support. So let's say, or you would like to look for executable apparent data type, right? And deny them, right? Such as like that. Okay, so that is the feature of the proxy to identify mobile codes at the same time, file extension, file type, or apparent data type. All right, so the next topic I'm going to talk about is the notify user object. So if you guys may have noticed earlier that when I try to access sites that we are blocking, okay, such as hacking.com, okay, you notice that this page is displayed. What you might be noticing on your proxy is different from what I'm seeing here because I changed it already. And this is a classic example of what we call exception page, okay, which is our topic right now. This page is configurable via the management console or the CLI. This page will be sent to the user browser if a certain condition or any transaction failure occur when the user is trying to access the internet. So we have two types of exception page. We have built-in exception page and we have user-defined exception page. So the one I'm using earlier that you saw, that is a built-in exception page that I have just customized, because you can in fact customize the built-in exception page, but you cannot delete it. Okay? So you cannot create a new built-in exception page. All right? You can edit it, but you cannot create a new one. So the exception page is in SDL format, so it is in hierarchy form, such as this. So if you go back to the proxy, you can find the exception page under, if you scroll all the way down, exceptions, and take a look at over here. Right? So this is the exception page. Right? So every exception page starts at exception.all. Okay? You can edit this page and insert your customized user-defined exception page over here. Okay, let me just get the one I have in my desktop, because this is the current exception page. So basically, this is just the same as the one over there. All right? So basically, if you are going to create your own user-defined exception page, you need to insert it after here, this page, this place, this area. All right? So what type of exception page you can create? You can create an HTML page, right? It should contain a HTTP code. Typically, it's 403. And if you know how to create HTML page, that will return probably a logo of your website, of your company, and some text, as what you have seen here in my example. Just like this one, right? And this is what we call the common exception page. Common exception page as this will appear in all sorts of error message. It will show the exception ID. Okay, so it will show the identifier, which is the exception ID, of what is that error is all about. So this error is about policy denied. All right, so if I try to access or to do other things, let's say, let me just try to see if there is. Definitely there is no URL with this. I want to show you another error. So this one is, okay, denied. Interesting. It could be due to what? Oh, suspicious. So this one is suspicious. Maybe see. So if the website is not right, so let me just try to remove this category. Did I have any suspicious policy created here? Interesting. Let me just disable this one first. Let me install. You can actually disable layer by right-clicking it. I think some of you may have figured it out already. So you see, this is a type of error. This one is another error. This is not a policy denied error. This is a DNS unresolved hostname error. As you can see, it shows me the same information over here, right? So this is a common exception page that will appear in all sorts of exception IDs or errors. Okay, so common exception page such as this can be created. And if you have this page with you, or you can create it, as you can see, it is just an HTML page. You can insert it, say, over this starting at exception at all. You can insert it here, right? And all the way before the user-defined exception page, which is up to here, right? Up to here, all the way up. So because user-defined exception page is an exception page that you created. So one way to create a user-defined exception page, my favorite way of doing it, is through the CLI. Right? So type here exceptions. And over here you can see you can create, let's say create my exception. Right, edit my exception. Right, then we inline it, inline format ELFF, and then you are denied access to $. I think should be URL. Due to policy ELFF. All right. Then we can try and see if we can use that in a policy. Okay, so let me just enable this first, install this policy. Let me relaunch the VPN and see if my user-defined exception page will appear. So let me delete this. This one, I will change this to set, new. Here you have return exception, and then you have your user-defined. All right, so it's not there because I may need to re-log out. So log out on my management console. Remember, Java is also caching the management console, right? So if you know that you created something and it's not appearing, it is always a good idea to log out and log in again. Okay, so configuration, policy, let's go back to our, and let's create that exception. So I will just edit this. This is, I think, goes to what website? gpn.co.jp. It is a HTTP website. That's why I'm using it to test. Set new return exception. So user defined. All right. So as you can see, it appears now here. Let's just try to use this. Okay, and install this policy. So once that is installed, we can go ahead and test this. We just cross this one. Let me just relaunch this browser. Right. Let's clear the browser cache and let's try to access. So as you can see, you are denied access to, I was using what we call substitution variable. So $URL is what we call a substitution variable. Okay, so instead it shows the URL that I'm trying to access. Okay, so we can use this in a policy such as what I have just shown you earlier. It can contain HTML, image links, and JavaScript, but we would recommend that you convert the image to base64 and code it in your HTML page rather than an image link. All right? And we also support substitution variable. So it was what you have seen earlier. I used $URL. I can also use different types of substitution variable. I can put the username. I can even put the proxy name, the category, and that is a substitution variable that I can configure in my exception page. So as what you can see here, I use the substitution variable $URL, and here we can see the URL that I'm trying to access. So you can be very creative in creating your page, you know, a customized page. So you can have different page on different, you know, errors, different rules in your policy. Now, beside exception page, we have what we call notify user object. This notify user object is only configurable via the VPM. You cannot do this in a CLI, as what I have shown you just now for the exception page. It is an action object. It requires HTTP. All right. So the substitution variable for the notify user object, because it is a page, it has to have a name, title, body, notify mode, and notify user. When are you going to notify the user again? Now, all this is already provided by the proxy. All right. What you need to do is you just need to edit the existing one. So I'm going to show that to you in a short while. So there are two types of notify user object. We call it a splash page, okay, and this one a splash page and a coaching page. So what is the difference? So you can think of a splash page as an announcement page. So let's say you are, you know, someone is trying to access your network via your guest network. So whenever the user is trying to access your guest network, you would like to send them a message that you're about to access the network. You're saying, blah, blah, blah company, you know, you must do that, do that. So when the user tried to access the first website he wanted to access, this page, which is a splash page, will come out as a disclaimer page, right, or an announcement page back to the user. The user will just click accept, and then he will continue accessing the website that you want to access. So when is that page going to come out again? It depends on your configuration. Another one is a coaching page. So this coaching page is just a reminder page. All right, it is a reminder page. Let's say you want to access a gambling website or travel website. So you can remind the user that travel website is not allowed during office hour, but click accept, and then you can continue accessing travel website. So what you can do, example of that is, let's say, let's move this, okay, let's move this, let's just move this tool down here. And then set a new, it is an action object. So you can go to your notify user, right? You can put in a name. This is your splash page. And, right, then you can put your message here. You are about to access using guest network. Right? So when do you want this at the next browser session? So how often, right? You want to see this splash page. So you click OK, and you can say notify the user again after midnight, at the next browser session, or after how many minutes, how many hours, right? You can do that. Okay, so that is your splash page. You just install this. All right, so you try to access some website, so you can see. And again, as you can see, I tried to access the website. It says you are about you're about to access using Acquis guest network. Click accept to continue. So I just click accept here. All right, so I was able to access the website. Okay, yes. So that is the last page. Anyone want to ask questions? Can you please mute your line if you're not going to ask questions? Okay, so that is an example of a splash page. So that page can be a, we can try to access another website. Okay, so this is the policy. I denied that website, right, earlier. Okay, So that is, this could be an announcement page that you can put. So if you are going to access that website again, since I click accept already, I was able to access this website. So let's, I close it. We might see again. Okay, so click accept already. It says next browser session, right? And then let me access that website again. I should not see the same. See, I did not see it again, right? Because the next browser session is my setting. Okay, or you can specify when. Right. So another page is what we call a notify user object. Sorry, a coaching page, or also known as the reminder page. So let's say I will create a policy that says URL category. If the category is, let's say, travel, okay? Let's say travel. Let's look for travel. Travel. All right, and we can create a coaching page for this. That new, and let's say notify user. So just say reminder. We just put this reminder. And we can say you are not allowed to access travel website, but if you have business needs to do so, click accept. Right? So we'll just remove this. All right, so we can just we can say next browser session after midnight, whatever. Click OK, and then let's install this. Oops. It says that this is, it complains because we have already a, let me see. Why did it complain? It says what? Do we have an error warning? Unreachable statement. I have already a previous rule that matches. Okay, so it will match this rule. Let me just move up, install this. All right, so let's go ahead and try to access the travel website. So what could be a travel website? So let's say travel.com, but I hope it is not HTTP. Travel.com. Yes, it is HTTPS, so we cannot use that for testing. Let's do this. Let's try to use the test page. Let's go travel. Click on this. So it says you are not allowed to access travel website, but if your business needs to do so, click accept. I click accept, I can access a travel website. All right? So that is what we call a coaching page. Okay, so next one I'm going to talk about access logging. So I'm just trying to defer the lab after just finishing the discussion, okay? All right, so access log is specifically, we talk about the web access log here, okay? The proxy has several logs. You have the event log, as what I have mentioned day one. Also, we have what we call access log or web access log. So a access log or a web access log, by default, this is disabled, right? By default, this is disabled. Exactly during day one, if you guys can recall, one of the labs there is to prepare your proxy, and the instruction is asking you to enable access logging, right? Because this is disabled by default. Now, first of all, where do we use the log? So when every time you access a website, the proxy will log the traffic locally, web access log. You can use the log in send that log away from the proxy to a server, for example, and then you can use a reporter software, which is another software that we have in Symantec, to generate a graphical report, intuitive and graphical report that the administrator can see. Because the web access log is just a bunch of log lines. It's just a lines of web access log, so you will not be able to appreciate it. So you need to have some form of a reporter. So that is where the access log is used. Now, the rest of this, I'm just going to use to do a demonstration, okay? So let me just show this to you right here. So, as I mentioned, by default, the access logging is disabled. All right? Now, why is that so? Because before you enable access logging, let's say if you're going to deploy a proxy, there are a few things that you need to do first. One, take note that the proxy is using a UTC time zone. So if you, even though you change your proxy clock in this manner to use your time zone, all right, the access log will still display UTC. So that is one thing that you need to consider also. If you want to display your local time zone, then you need to edit the web access log, all right, the default one. Because the default, take note that every protocol has its own logging facility. So for example, let's take a look at HTTP, right? So HTTP, where's that? Right, so HTTP is using main, okay? It is using main log. HTTPS forward proxy is SSL. Both of these is using UTC time zone. And the log facility for HTTP is main. And the main log facility, right, is using BC reporter main V1. This is the default one. Okay, I just changed it to V2 version 2, but the default one is BC reporter main V1. All right, this BC reporter main V1 is using this type of format, the extended log file format, which is, if you click on edit, this is the format. All right, this is the extended log file format, which is similar to this. Okay, so this is the ELFF string, similar to what I'm showing you just now. The format contains all this. It contains date and time, time taken, client IP, username if there is, user agent. So this will contain the information based on the format, right? So this is the default one. And if you can see over here, home, it shows date, time. Date, time is in UTC. So by default, it will show UTC time. Okay? So if you want to change it to your own time zone, which I have created a new one here, which you can click new, what you just need to do is you have to change the date time, this one, okay? You just have to put local time, okay? Local time, one word, all right? So in this example here, which is I've created, edit view, so let's take a look at if I change it. So it shows here local time, okay? Local time. So since I have created this, I will need to reference this that will use my main. So main, which is this one, main is using, okay, let me put this first to the original format, which is BC reporter main V1. So now it is BC reporter main V1. All right. So continue your line, please. Okay. So main is using BC reporter main V1. Now, let me show you a log tail coming from the proxy. Okay? So a log tail looks like this. Okay, so let's go to access log. Okay, so this one, mean. All right, so as you can see, this is the UTC time zone. All right, so as I try to access some website, okay, let me just disable some of the website. Okay, what is that? Or the request URL. Let me just disable this. Disable this. 1, 2. What do I do? Disable this. I just want to make my rule simple. So I just disable this one first. Install this. Okay, so I just want to access some website here. Let's say this test. So as I access this website, a log will be generated based on the format, the default format. You see, this is UTC, right? This is UTC log format. This is UTC time. So I want to change this to my format that I created, which is BC Reporter Main 1, B2, version 2, which is using local time. But the local time that I configured here, the clock, which is, I'll set local time is Calcutta, India. So let me go back here. It's slow. Okay, now I don't know why it's slow. Hate this, because when we are doing this, all of the sudden, and so you can see here the time T. All right, let me just close this browser first so that it will not display another log. Okay, and then let's launch this proxy here. What happened? All of a sudden my lab slowed down. All of a sudden my lab slowed down. 10 to the 2. Oh, what are you doing? So now I don't know already why this is slowing me down. Okay, slow down. So basically what I wanted to show you is that when I change the format, it should show here the local time, okay? All right, so if you are happy with that, after you change it to your local time zone, the log, the next thing that you need to do is decide what are you going to do with the log. So you need to first configure and decide how often you want to upload the log to your server. It will be continuous or periodically. You can say that I want to upload the log every midnight. So, or you want to continuously upload the log to your server. So after you have decided that, the next thing that you need to do is what will be the upload client? So where are you going to upload the log? So we support different types. In version 7, we support also STP, FTP. So here you can see Kafka, FTP, and HTTP. If you're going to upload it to a syslog server, you can use custom client. Right? So after you have configured the settings, then the proxy will now start to upload the log to your server based on the log upload schedule you have configured. You can then use a Bluecoat reporter to generate the log or the report for you based on the uploaded log. But take note that the log are just a bunch of log lines. Okay? The web access log the logging can also be manipulated in the policy. So if you go to your VPM, you can create policy to disable access logging. Let's say proxy administrators disable access logging, or suppress some of the log entry as well. Okay, you can do that. All right, so that pretty much conclude the basic course. So what you just have left to do is the several 3 different lab here. So managing download VPM, and then exception page, and then access log. Okay, so I'm going to put this over here.